It's Lisa from Been There, Got Out. And tonight we are welcoming back our friend Liz Reese, Loan Lady Liz. She's a mortgage expert and she's been on before, but not for a while. So we're going to talk. There she is. Hi, Liz.
Hey,
Can you
how's it going?
Good,
Yes. Yeah.
good, good. See, I can't remember when we were on together last, but it's been a while.
Oh, it has been a while. Yeah. You look great. I
Yeah.
like your hair. It looks cute.
Oh, thanks. Well, I've said this to you before. I feel like you're in Miami because you've got like such this awesome style to your hair and the glasses, but you're in California. And in
Yes.
my head, it's Florida.
I know. I'm gonna be in Florida for like the next few weekends, actually. I should have just like stayed and extended my
Really?
visit. Yeah, I just have
Oh
some
my
like
gosh,
like
it's too
coaching things
hot
I'm
for us.
doing. So yes. And my hair in Florida is like ding. So
Well, Liz, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone that might not have seen you when you were on last time? Like, who are you? What do you do?
yeah, so I am a mortgage broker. I am in California. And I'm licensed actually in California and Utah. I am working on other states like Florida, but that primarily is where I'm at right now. I have a designation in divorce mortgage guidance, so I've got some training
Ooh,
around the divorce team that needs to be created.
ooh, I don't think I
And
knew that. I don't think we talked about that last time. I'm going to
oh
ask you about
yeah.
that.
Yeah, yeah. So I have that designation and I do specialize in reverse mortgage. So that's super helpful in that like senior divorce because when you're that age, it's hard to qualify. If you're divorcing and you are having to like separate assets and buy a new house, it's really hard to qualify. So the reverse mortgage space is actually really interesting in the divorce space of things. So let's throw that out there. But yeah, I love that loan community too. So
Wow. Okay. So I know because during our last interview, it sort of came out that you're also a child of divorce. And
yeah.
so I wanted to ask you about that and I didn't even realize about the whole divorce extras with your training. But can you tell our people a little bit about how you might deal with a client differently who's going through a divorce versus just a regular person buying a house?
Yeah, well, there's definitely the components of like if you are getting divorced, are you paying child support? Are you paying alimony or are you receiving those things? Do we need it to qualify to get the house or do we have to buy somebody out? The loan structure is different when you're going through a divorce. So if you're needing to like, let's just say statistically women are the ones that keep the houses. If you're having to buy out your ex-husband, that loan, if you were normally going to just do like need $40,000, you'd have to do a cash out loan. But when you're doing a divorce buyout, you can do it as a regular refinance and get the extra money to pay that person off. You can't take out extra. You can't do like, I need to pay him 40 and I want to pay off my car. Like you can't do that. Then that is a cash out loan. The difference between those two lending products is the cash out loan is typically more expensive. So that's the only difference. But
Interesting. Okay, now what about the emotional component when you yourself are dealing with, like, when does your divorce training come in?
um, gosh, well, it's really important to have a divorce person in the begin or a mortgage person be a part of your team in the beginning because if we have to help guide on how to set up alimony or child support is a little different because basically with child support and alimony, we have to see a 3-year continuance. Well, if your kid is 17, you're not going to keep getting that child support for 3 years, right? But in an alimony situation, some people could just pay out like, I'm going to pay alimony for the next 5 years, or here's a chunk of money, sayonara, like it can be like that. But in order to qualify for a loan, we need to see income. And so we want to set the alimony up to come to you on a monthly basis because of that. So that's where it's important to like figure that out in the beginning, but also can this person qualify? If we need the alimony and the child support, in order to use that for income, we have to have 6 months of like proof of it being deposited. And so I think where that gets tricky is like I had a gal recently that that's always kind of complicated, isn't it? Um,
Mhm.
she was like, his paychecks were getting put into his shared account and or to their shared account. And then she was paying the bills and kind of like he was getting an allowance almost. But she wanted to keep the house, and I told her, you have to get a separate account and start having, if it's $1,000 a month, it's $1,000 consistently going into that account every month so we can count that as income. So where it made a difference in this client's part is she just did not do that. She was, I don't know what the deal was, but she just was not listening to me. And so for her, it took a year for us to refinance and pay him out of the house. And the difference between 6 months ago when we could have refinanced and we just closed her loan last month was probably 2% in an interest rate, which made her payment higher. So I mean, you can't predict these things, like especially the interest rates going up and stuff, but it just made a difference, I think, in like, I mean, I'll still track her rate. We'll refinance her when rates come down, and that's not a problem necessarily, but if you can follow the advice of the people that know what they're talking about, that's really important. There are reasons, and even though I couldn't predict that the rates would go up, sometimes acting fast is like, we know this is the devil we know right now, so let's deal with what we can deal with right now. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
so I
definitely.
think
It's
it's a
like
good thing.
you're their advocate.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Just
Yeah,
just like another professional. You're trying to save them money. You're
right.
trying to get them through this really difficult life transition.
Right. Right. And I'm meant to be a more neutral party to the situation. I'm not choosing sides necessarily. I didn't suggest that she do that with her income because I was trying to screw her ex-husband out of something, like it wasn't that. It was just for us to count this as income. This is what you need to do. This is how you need to get things going so that everybody can get taken care of in the end of things.
Yeah, I think a lot of people often say, because we deal with people through the court system, and they're like, I feel really bad, but I didn't really know what I was doing. We say, of course you didn't know what you're doing, because who does? And I imagine it's a similar thing with selling a home, especially under this kind of pressure when you're going through a divorce, this huge life transition. Like, how are you supposed to know? That's
Right.
why you have to trust some of the experts or understand why they're telling you what to do and when.
Right. Yeah. Well, and the nice thing about the mortgage and the real estate, because I think it's important to have a real estate agent, actually, a real estate agent and a CPA. So you need to have like, I think people think about the divorce attorney being the big person, and that is a big person. Don't get me wrong, but like you need to have a CPA who knows how to deal with divorce or accountant, a mortgage professional, and a real estate agent, because all of those people, the nice thing with the real estate side of things, divorce is a protected class. So we actually, like, I can't charge anybody for my advice when it comes to mortgage. I'll get paid if you do a refinance and we pay someone out, or if you buy a house, you guys sell your marital house and then buy another house, like that's when I get paid. But to just have a conversation and learn what it is that you need to do, that doesn't cost anything. So why not have somebody on your team that's free?
I know. I'm always like, educate yourself. And, we certainly charge for our services, but I'm like, here's a bunch of other free resources and
Right,
do what you can as cheaply as you can, but don't cut back on what you need to spend on, but especially
right,
because they could use your services and learn, why not?
right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about also why a house is so significant to people dealing with divorce, like the idea of home. And I was thinking about the other day, like you've got this, you're not just selling a thing to somebody, you're
Right.
selling like not just an expensive thing either, but a home represents a lot. So what do
Right,
you think
yeah.
it represents? And by the way, as we started this Instagram live, somebody mentioned how they're getting family support. And I was talking to another person earlier that was saying a lot of people in these cases, unfortunately, end up homeless for a while because they don't know what to do and they can't afford it. So let's talk about home and houses.
Right, yeah. Well, definitely, I think just, I don't know, experiencing it as a child, myself personally, is like we lived with my grandma and grandpa for a little while. And, I remember when my mom bought her first home and it was like, it was her house. Like she got to paint. I remember her painting my sister's walls. They did this like funny paint splatter thing. And it just was so significant with all that she had like sacrificed. And, there were three of us and she's a single mom. And, I love my dad but he wasn't paying a lot in child support. So she really was doing a lot on her own. And so I think when you're getting divorced, the home has such a great significance of like these memories that you created, and there's the stability of it. And when your life feels like, oh, it's just like a tornado, this is kind of a stable thing. Um, I do think that it's important though to be really cognizant of your ability to afford it. You also don't want to be totally house poor for the sake of not wanting to disrupt your kids' lives. I think there are
Define
lots
that, Liz, because some people don't know what house poor means. I mean, I
house
do, but I think some
yeah,
people might not.
yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, house poor is like when just all your money goes to make your house payment. So, you have a little bit left over for food and the other things you need, but you don't get to like go and have some fun maybe, or, pay for the other bills that you might have. And so you're just stressed. So, I think there's the two sides of it. There is stability, there is not wanting to disrupt your kids' lives, but also remembering that it is just a house. And sometimes starting fresh and new and creating new memories in a new space, that's okay. That's okay too. And I think that kids are really resilient. And maybe they're going to be a little pissed off that they have to move out of their house, but sometimes it's just the way life is. So,
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I was gonna say, like, do you know around what percentage of people that you deal with want to keep their home?
I feel like they all want to keep their home, whether they
All
all
of
can.
them do.
Yeah, I've not. I mean, I guess I should say, if I was a real estate agent, I would have probably a different response, because when you're dealing with a real estate agent, they are helping people sell their house, the marital home. Um, but I would say everybody that I've worked with, and I have like one divorce man who was paying alimony. He wanted to keep the house, but everybody else seems to be women. But sometimes they just can't, like they can't afford it. We can't get them qualified, and we just have to start them off somewhere else. So the real estate agent might have a different answer for you because my answer is a little more like I'm dealing with the refinance. So usually they're keeping it.
Yeah, yeah,
But I think most
interesting.
of the time they do want to keep it. I did hear, I have a CPA that I work with, and he says this is just his advice. When you divorce, you should just sell everything you're connected to with each other. That was his advice.
Really?
Yeah, it's just the cleanest way to just divide all the assets, was to just sell and divide and be done. So I thought that was interesting because
Yeah.
I had a client that she and her husband had two houses. One of them was a rental. She moved into the rental, and then 3 or 4 years later, she wanted to sell it. And she was going, because it was a rental property, like, so a marital shared rental property for 5 years. They had been able to depreciate the taxes, which means basically to delay any taxes. And so she wanted to sell it, and she was going to be taxed. All that delayed taxes, she was going to have to pay with the sale of her house. And she'd already split with her husband, they'd already divided the assets, but they never talked to an accountant. So her tax bill was going to be like $40,000 that she should have split with him, but because they just didn't consult with anybody, she is now stuck someday when she sells that house with that tax bill. So,
Uh,
so yeah, so the accountant was like, always sell everything. I don't always think that's like necessarily what I would want to do, but I thought that was good advice. It was interesting advice.
it is. And so that made me think of something that came up that somebody just wrote on our feed earlier today that I thought, I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Relocation. So the accountant is saying sell everything and almost like clean break. A lot of times people want to just move far away. How often do you see that? And do you think that's healthier to do? Or do you think it's better to try to stay, where you are?
Yeah, I'm sure that it depends on what your relationship is with your ex, right? But also, if you have kids, that's a lot different. If you have kids that you're having to split time with versus, my dad growing up, he was in a different state. So we only saw him in the summer pretty much. And then we got old enough where we didn't want to go there in the summer anymore. So I think there's some awareness of that. I think it's more complicated than just where's the house? I have a gal right now. She really wants to keep the kids in the school district that
Mhm.
they're in, and
Yeah.
she can't afford it. Like she's gonna have to pull her kids out of school and move, unless her husband buys a house in their school district and then he gets most of the custody of the kids. So I think
Yeah,
that,
we're having a lot of those school conversations now with our clients too, with
yeah.
that time of year.
Yeah, yeah. Or how do we get them, if we can't live in the area, can we still get them to that school? Or, that's where I think people keeping the house, that's part of the consideration is like if it is expensive, can we make that sacrifice to pay for this house to keep them in this school? And is that worth it?
Yeah. Now I'm thinking also we have a lot of situations where somebody wants to keep the house. They hope that the other person moves a reasonable distance, and then their ex picks a house in the same neighborhood on the same street
Yeah.
just to keep it going. Do you see that?
Um, Well, I think I had a client, she was friends, we're friends, and she was in our neighborhood and she, it just was too hard. It was too complicated to like stay in the neighborhood and go to the same church as the ex-husband. And then, it just gets so complicated. And then the ex-husband's dating and gets remarried. And,
Yeah.
sometimes it's just easier. A little bit of distance, I think, is good. Yeah. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just my opinion, but some people get divorced and it's just they're still friends. It just didn't work, right? But then others,
Well,
it's
not the people watching you now
really
on this
messy.
interview. No.
Yeah, really messy most of the time. I think statistically it's very messy. So yeah,
Yeah, well, ours are like the extreme high conflict ones. Like ours are always the super messy ones, but I think I think 85 to 90% of divorce is people calm down and move on. Ours don't tend to, unfortunately.
right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, then I think you would want to live in a different city, don't you?
Yeah.
The very least. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah. Tricky though. All right. So before you mentioned that kids are really resilient in terms of moving. So say someone has to move and of course the kids are sad and upset. And is there advice that you give to your clients in terms of helping the kids get settled? Like, do you have any tips on how to make the transition easier for the kids?
Sometimes I would say to try to make it it's their new bedroom, and how can we decorate it the way you want? I mean, it just is going to be hard, but I think you're acknowledging and you're validating, and what can we do to help make this be fun? And let's go to Target and pick out some new bedding, and let's paint the walls, and we'll do this project together. And I think when you can put yourself to work and put your kids to work, I think that makes a big difference in like the memories you can create.
Yeah, as you said that, I just had the thought that there's so many things that kids don't have control over. And especially a divorce, they don't have any control over that. But
Right.
by presenting something like that where, oh, it's your room, like let's decorate it however you want, I would think at least they feel like some sense of control over their lives where they can make
Yeah.
their own space cozy.
Right. And not try to control it as the mom, or the dad. Like, let's go to Home Depot and get some paint because paint's cheap. And if you want that wall to be black, then we're gonna paint it black.
Right.
Just let them do it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. All right. So what about are there any pros versus and cons from staying in that marital home? I mean, you mentioned about being house poor if you can't afford it.
Yeah, well, so the pro would be that you're continuing to get equity in this investment. And so you're going to have to pay rent somewhere, right? So you might as well be making your own house payment if you can. The con, I guess, would be if your dishwasher breaks, you have to pay for it. There's not a landlord that you can call and have them fix it. But I had a gal that she got divorced, bought her husband out in 2019, and look at how house prices went up in 2020. I mean, they went up way faster than I think that he kept, like maybe his 401k or something. Like her house value went up way faster than his 401k. Now, that's not always going to be the case. It worked out for her that way, that equity bump. So that's good.
Yeah. And also I was thinking like we said, well, actually we didn't really say this specific question, but when there's marital property that's a house, this big asset, how common is it for someone to say, I want to buy the other person out versus what the CPA that you work with said, just sell it all?
Sell it all. Usually they want to buy the other person out. Somebody wants to stay in the house. So then it's a matter of calculating, what's my new payment going to be? What would it be to rent a place? Is it, in some cases, it's going to make your payment go up a whole bunch. And then it's like, well, I can't really afford that. But if it's as much to refinance and keep the house as it will be to move into a house or apartment in town, might as well keep your house if you can qualify for it.
Do you find, many of our people have been stay-at-home parents, so they haven't worked in years, and
Yeah.
then they're saying, I want to keep the house. And is there anything to make it work, or it's just,
That one is really tricky, and I have plenty of those out there. So that's where like the child support and alimony comes into play. So we can use that income as long as it's been being received for 6 months. We can show proof of deposit. So even if it's not in like a final stamped divorce that the judge says $2,000 a month, like if that individual can start paying or getting that deposited into your account, you can show history of it. So even
Mhm.
if your divorce, and then that way when your divorce is final, you can close the loan the next day if it's been 6 months. Like it isn't like you have to start at 6 months when you get the yeah, whatever, what is it called? I can't
The
think of.
divorce, the
Yeah,
paper
but
sign?
but the paper is like the one that
Yeah,
has like this is what has to be paid. Um,
yeah, yeah, the order.
yes, the order. Yeah.
Yeah, because these
Um,
things take years sometimes,
yeah, right.
as,
Yeah,
as we know.
yeah,
So that's good. Like it's not about waiting for the judge to sign anything. You're not on the court's calendar. It's really like, let's just get this routine started. So it shows that I'm getting this amount of money. And it is really common for people to have some amount set before the divorce is finalized just to get through to the end. And even if it changes, at least you have something there, like some kind of record.
right. Yeah, yeah. Because maybe they're depositing a lot less and they're going to get more. I mean, or they're giving them a lot more and they're going to get less. Like there's just get a history of consistent payments. That might be a little hard in some cases of people not being agreeable. So I can see that being an issue. Uh,
Mhm.
so the way that it works if you were to get a job, because typically the stay-at-home parent does need to go out and work, very likely. If they get a job that pays them a salary, we can count that as income right away. But if they get a job that's just an hourly job, then we need to show 2 years history of an hourly. It doesn't have to be the same job, but we have to show they've been working at an hourly job for 2 years. And
Ooh, so that's
guidelines
harder.
change. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a lot order. So a salary means we can count it right away, and
Yeah.
an hourly is you have to wait 2 years.
Yeah. Well, because you have to show that you're working 40 hours a week for 2 years. The salary is just like you're going to get this much a month, whether you work 40 hours a week or 80 hours a week or 10 hours a week. Like this is what you're going to get every month. But the hourly, it's based on how much you work, right? So that's why they want to see the 2 years, like the consistency of it, like how
Mhm.
consistently getting income. And if you're
Yeah.
trying to, if you know that you have 2 years and you're trying to qualify for the house, you need to do your darndest to work 40 hours a week.
Yeah, that's good to know. Okay, so also if one party is staying in the marital home, why is it, and I remember this question from our last interview, why is it so important to get the home inspected before a buyout
Right,
or
right.
anything?
Yeah. So you almost have to treat it like like you are purchasing this house. You are purchasing this house from your married relationship on your own. And if you're going to buy a house, you're going to get inspections done on it, right? You want to know what is wrong with the house. And even if you built the house and you think, well, I've lived here the whole time, I know what's wrong with it. Like, you never know what's going on, like basement level of houses. And so I'll give you an example. I had a client that they were selling their house, it was a second home. They are no kids. I think they had one cat. They were like a senior aged couple. And so this beautiful home in a house that maybe they spent, you know, 1 month total a year in. So just like in great shape. And so when the inspections got done, it turns out the house was at the bottom of a hill where all the water would flow down. And the contractor had not properly um, done the drainage in their house. And so all the water, it was like there was like a pool underneath their house. And it
That
had
nobody could see.
and
That
nobody could
nobody,
see it, and they don't go there often enough to like wonder why there's so many frogs around here or
right?
mosquitoes. Like, what's going on? And so, but it had ruined the I don't know what the right word, construction word is for it, but like the footings maybe of their house. Like it was an $80,000 repair for that water damage. And so it was like, if they had been divorced and it was just one person's, like that one person would be responsible for that damage. But because they were together, they're both responsible for it. So I think that's why you do an inspection before, you're buying your house. You're buying your house from your ex. You want to make sure that like they are as responsible for any of the mold or roof damage or any of the things that could be wrong with your house. Like you want it to be, if we're really going to equally divide this asset, that's part of it, is that like what's wrong with it too.
Yeah. And so now an inspection obviously is not free.
Right. Maybe
So
$500.
yeah.
Yeah.
So 500 versus finding out an $80,000 expense
Yeah.
later.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Makes
I
sense.
mean, I think that's a pretty extreme. I don't think that happens very often, but I don't know. It might in Florida. It seems like it's very damp in Florida. There could be some like mold or, things that you don't.
Yeah. Uh-oh, Liz, I think I lost your volume. I don't know if you got a call.
Going on.
Okay. Now I hear you again.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
okay. So I'm
Maybe.
again, like circling back just to keep reiterating this for our people who are so worried about the kids being okay throughout a process of a separation or a divorce. And again, you are the child of a divorce and you've seen people moving all the time. I'm sure with your training, the extra with knowing about divorce, like you probably see people freaking out about how are my kids going to be okay? Like I really want to stay in home. I can't afford it or whatever. I can't do it. Like, how do you comfort them?
Oh my
Is
God.
there a way to comfort them?
Is there a way to comfort them? Yeah. I think that what you're doing, this support and helping, I think it's a mindset thing. I think the support that you're offering for people, I'm sure mindset is a part of what you're coaching around too. And I think that you can, it's gonna suck. It's gonna suck for everybody. It just is. And knowing that it is okay. But I think having the
I like that.
mindset around how are we going to, I don't want to say make this a positive experience for everybody because that isn't necessarily going to be the results of it or how it works, but um, I really think it's having the mindset of like we are going to get through this and we're going to be okay and it's going to be okay and wherever we end up, I always say I don't know what everybody's God, the universe, whatever. Like for me, it's God. I think God has a plan for me, and I have faith that He's gonna direct my path. And so I just think if that can be shared with that mindset can be shared with your family and your kids, you're gonna be okay. This is all gonna be okay.
Yeah, that is really comforting. I see someone just put how to make the best of the situation. And
Right,
that's true. And I love, like, even though you're in California, that you did the New York reality check. Like, yeah, it is going to suck. Like, there's nothing that anyone can say to make it quickly get better.
right,
It's a huge transition. It's hard for everybody. You don't know where you're going to end up sometimes, but it is going to be okay. Like, we're
right.
going to get through it. We're going to work together. We're going to be thankful for the things that we do have going right in our lives and try to remember that when it's really hard sometimes.
Yeah, and I think if you can find ways I'll just throw this in. I think if you can find ways to serve with your kids, like serve other people, I think that changes your heart, and
Absolutely.
whatever that means to how you can help people or how it helps heal yourself. Like I think if you can serve in your family, whatever that looks like, if it's just making cookies for a neighbor, I think that's just those little things. How can we help serve? It takes off that weight of yourself, of what you're always so worried about with yourself.
Right. And I think it also, again, puts things in perspective. Like, however bad you're feeling, somebody's probably got it worse.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So help, like, always help.
Right. Yeah. And it's hard work and it takes your mind off of it, I think, when you're serving and you're doing something nice for somebody else. And yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. All right. So Liz, let's finish this off by you saying how can people find you and who you can help and what you can do for them.
Yeah, so I know I'm just licensed in California and Utah, but I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody just around, even if it is connecting them with another divorce mortgage specialist. Like I'm super happy to do that. I know people all over the country that can help. Um, so you can follow me on Instagram at Lone Lady Liz. So obviously I'm here, and my link is in my bio of that. So it has all my numbers and email addresses and stuff. That seems to be the easiest way to kind of access it. But yeah, I'm here to just be a resource. And my goal is to help educate and help and
Good.
be there however I can. So,
And you're free.
and I'm free.
All right. Well, Liz, thank you again so much for coming back on and talking with us and offering, I think, a lot of comfort through one of these really
Yeah.
difficult life transitions.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
Okay, my pleasure. All right, we'll catch up with you soon.
Okay.
I hear it. Good timing.
Yes. All right. See ya.
All right, bye.